I know I probably say this every week, but today is an episode I am absolutely fired up about, and that's because I get to talk to honestly one of my idols in the hobby podcasting world, Brett McGrath from Stacking Slabs, a character that we unlocked last week. Today we narrow our focus in on golf cards. Now I know not everybody who listens to Funneling Cardboard is a fan of golf or collects golf cards, but what we really dive into today is the importance of Panini Prizm. What can we learn about the Panini Prizm lineage and legacy from other sports like basketball, football, and wrestling cards? Why he thinks Prizm brand is the most significant ultra-modern brand in the hobby? And what are the repercussions of bringing Prizm to golf? Attention to golf cards from non-golf collectors. What his chase cards would be, not knowing exactly what kind of insert sets Panini is going to be presenting to us. And lastly, what are some of the traps and pitfalls when Prizm first drops, and navigating that wild rush of parallels and the importance of that debut year. What is up? Welcome back to Fondling Cardboard. I'm your host, Mike Lakusta, aka the Golf Card Collector. That's right, you are listening to your favorite NPR style of podcast about sports trading cards. And I actually don't know if I'm allowed to say NPR because it's obviously a trademarked organization. I've had quite a few listeners point out that I've got this smooth approach to the show rather than the high energy that you'd hear from a lot of other podcasts and YouTube channels. And maybe that's my style, or maybe it's because I record these late at night. We'll never know. But my wife sure noticed because for Christmas, I forget if I mentioned this, I got the NPR's podcast startup guide. And not only that, but this is the hardcover version. Man, I love my wife. As I mentioned, I'm so excited about this episode. Before we jump into the interview, though, obviously the 2024 Upper Deck Golf flagship set has released. I'm seeing all kind of buzz on the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group. I'm seeing messages come in on Instagram from people sharing hits, asking for opinions. I even had a really fun FaceTime call with a friend of the show, James Peacock, who was just ripping 2024 Upper Deck packs, and somehow, just the luck of the cards for the 10 minutes that we were FaceTiming, he happened to pull a case hit with me on the line. And of course, he and I both snapped screenshots on our phones. Just a fun memory. I would really like to do a formal set review on 2024 Upper Deck Golf. However, a question came into the mailbag, and this was from Pascal Garneau, who says, "Hey Mike, my local card shop has a bunch of new golf card boxes. Value-wise, worth it? The same as the last few years?" So I just want to make it clear to everyone, these boxes are considered a flagship set. Is a paper product, meaning it's low cost for the manufacturers to make. They can typically print this set to the moon. The boxes come with tons of packs, tons of cards. The hobby boxes are very cheap, $100 US or something like that, maybe $120. James even mentioned he could basically complete an entire base set just from a single hobby box. Autographs are few and far between. In fact, you'd be extremely lucky to hit an autograph out of any of these boxes. The inserts, serial numbering, that sort of stuff is kind of what you're going after. So to answer your question directly, Pascal, it just really depends on what you're going after. If you just enjoy the experience of opening packs, of ripping a box yourself, not having to buy into breaks, not having to wait until the singles pop up on eBay, but you just, as a true collector, want to open the product, yeah, it's totally worth it. It's 100% worth it. Buy a case, spend $1,000, because at the end of the day, this is a recreational hobby. And if you enjoy buying slabbed, rare, extremely expensive cards, this is not the product for that. But if you enjoy fondling the cards, opening them, reading the cards, getting the bang for your buck that, a 12-year-old kid would think of, someone who's just trying to amass and accumulate a big collection, complete a set, keep cards in a binder to enjoy and flip through with your friends, that's what this set is all about. Now, James actually pointed out to me that another Upper Deck golf product has been announced. So we've got the flagship product that's already released. We're expecting Upper Deck SP Game Used later this year. And a third set called Upper Deck Portfolio is now in the works. And the neat thing about Portfolio, and the reason that I'm most excited about that set this year, other than Panini Prizm and stuff that we're going to get into in a little bit, is that Portfolio is basically going to be a mishmash of all of the other Upper Deck sets and products that aren't being released as standalone sets, but we're going to get access to them. So to draw an analogy, if you think of Goodwin Champions that releases every year, they've started throwing in black diamond cards. They've started mixing in platinum. They're mixing in exquisite cards. And that's basically the makeup that Portfolio is going to be. Plus, I'm sure some other really cool sets as well. But the nice thing is, remember, this is a golf set. It's not a multi-sport set. So hopefully you guys aren't tired about hearing about golf cards, because that's basically what Brett and I discuss for the next half an hour. Enjoy. So I know you're not a big golf card guy, but you are familiar with Panini from other sports. I've heard you talk a lot about basketball, football, wrestling. So recently Panini announced that they'll be making live golf cards. Specifically in their announcement, they said they will be doing Prizm, Panini Instant, and I believe Impeccable were the only ones announced so far. Did you know about this news at all? And do you have any initial reactions?
I did hear the news, got my attention, which I think is, to be honest with you, man, I think if there is going to be Prism in anything, it's going to get people's attention because Prism has become just such a flagship product. And I was thinking about this because I knew you were going to ask it because you love to talk about golf cards primarily. But I was thinking about the position of golf collectors and this change happening. And the easiest point of reference I can make is with wrestling cards. When wrestling cards left Tops and there was a transition period, and then they ended up Panini getting the license, and in 2022 launched the first edition of WWE Prizm. Now, to me, as a collector and someone who really appreciates manufactured scarcity and also appreciates shiny cards, that really excited me. I love gold prisms out of 10. I love black out of one of ones. Those cards are true chase cards of this era, regardless of what segment you collect in. And I think part of my infatuation with the Prism brand is when I got back into the hobby in 2018, 2019, those were the first cards I was exposed to and became such a important product to what I collect today. So I think it's really cool news. I think it's really, really good news for uh, golf collectors. I think there is also likely going to be some frustrating times with golf collectors because what you'll realize is that when Prism drops, and I would imagine that it'll start with the Prism product, everyone's going to be really excited. Everyone's going to want to get the rare and scarce cards of their favorite golfer, but there's going to be a lot of non-golf people because it's Prism product coming in to try to acquire cards because no matter what segment it is, what category it is, these cards have value and will be resold. And so that's something that I know with wrestling I had to compete with. And I stayed patient, waited for the dust to settle a little bit. And like 6 months, a year down the road, that was the time where I was able to get the cards that I thought I was going to be able to get right out of the gate. So that's just one early observation I'd make or recommend to anyone out there who's already excited for this. It's really good to be excited. Participate. Like if doing breaks is your thing, do breaks. If buying singles is your thing, buy singles. But I would say be cautious because it's probably going to be a wild road, especially at launch.
I completely understand what you're saying, because as multi-sport sets have been released through Upper Deck, Skybox Metal Universe, Goodwin Champions, that kind of stuff, we've been getting some pretty cool cards. We've been getting Precious Metal Gems, Retro Star Rubies. We've been getting the very first shiny Tiger Woods cards. And when it first comes out, you have to be patient because the prices are going to be quadrupled what they'll be 6 to 12 months later. And I do try to hit that home with our audience, but I appreciate you kind of making that clear, especially from somebody who's very familiar with Prizm and Panini. I run the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group, and there's a lot of chatter about this news. And so many golf collectors aren't even familiar with Panini at all. I've had one of my closest golf card friends who I know and I trust, and I consider him an authority in golf cards. He asked me, what is a prism? And he used an S instead of a Z, instead of a Z for you Americans. There's just this huge knowledge gap. And I collect other sports, so I'm very familiar with Panini. So what would you tell a golf card collector who knows nothing about Panini sets or cards?
It's funny you bring up this example because this was so true in wrestling too. Wrestling is such a niche, and there were my mind was blown at how many wrestling card collectors who just collect wrestling cards knew nothing about the Prizm product. Whereas me, as someone who collects football, basketball, and wrestling, I felt like I had an advantage going into this where I knew out of the gates I had seen the product drop in several iterations through different sports, and I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage from that perspective. But I would say so. Sorry, I went off. Your question was what I would how I would describe Prizm to non or golf collectors who have no exposure to Prizm. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't want this to sound like hyperbole, because I really believe this is true. And I will also have a caveat in saying like I'm a self-proclaimed prison simp. Like I think the Prizm brand is the most important brand in sports cards right now, based on the flood of people coming back into the hobby and the exposure of Prizm and the impact that has had on so many boomerang collectors. I Before this, I was having a conversation, and there was a Prizm Black 1 of 1 sale last week of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who's in the MVP conversation in basketball. And that card, his rookie Black 1 of 1, sold for $192,000, which was the 12th highest Black Prizm sale recorded on Card Ladder, which is significant. Now, I think one thing that I would recommend to golf collectors who are trying to figure out Prizm for the first time is that there are a lot of parallels. Not all parallels matter. I haven't looked at the configuration of the golf product, but I would imagine there's going to be a lot of different serial numbered cards. Those cards help elevate the price of hobby boxes. They're what breakers get excited about when they pull. It's that sort of thing. From my experience, in my opinion, only a few parallels really matter. And I think it is really hard, no matter who you collect, to have the expectation that you're going to go out and acquire the Black 1 of 1. Like, that's a dream come true if you're in a position financially and the card actually comes into your hemisphere that you can make that happen. But I think like the gold out of 10 Prizm, in my opinion, is the most important parallel card in this era across football and basketball. And I will also argue wrestling, and there's probably others too, but just those, because it allows you as the collector to get a card that is gold is king. Everybody loves gold. It's the whole like people are infatuated by gold. I think 10 is it provides scarcity that it's really hard to freaking get, but you can still acquire them, and you're probably going to have to pay up a little bit, but I think those elements are important. And the final nugget on gold prisms, and why I'm just like doubling down on why I think these cards are important, is that I don't know what the agreement is with the license and how many years they're going to do this, but like gold prism runs of players that you collect through the different years is a thing. And so you've got player collectors, you've got people chasing the those runs. Like, it just makes those cards in demand and highly desirable. So think my punctuation point here would just be like gold prism really matters. I think it's going to matter on golf cards. I would just be careful on understanding how some of the parallels have performed across different sports before you go spend the money. It's probably going to be on the more expensive side, but I would say a safe place to put your money if you're getting into these cards for the first time are with gold prisms. I think they're timeless parallel. One of my favorite parallels in sports cards ever, for a lot of the reasons that I just shared.
Awesome. I really like what you said about the other parallels maybe not being important or significant because you can be a collector and enjoy having a card serial numbered out of 65 or serial numbered out of 100 or 99 or 199 or whatever the prism color scheme is. And those cards might not be investable per se, but if you wait that period, those 6 to 12 months, those prices will come way down and you can pick those cards up and just kind of have them as a showpiece on your desk. But if you're going to be an aggressive, true collector, someone who wants to identify as I am Brooks Koepka collector, you're going to want his gold prism or his black finite, or maybe they've got black nebulas and whatever other, you know, extremely rare cards. And this is something I've been trying to hit home because people have been asking me, what are the chase cards going to be? My number one answer is Gold Prism. Second answer is the one of ones. Other inserts that I've brought up would be like Color Blast, Downtown. Those would be highly sought after. Are there any other chase cards just in general from Prism, or maybe those ones weren't even in Prism? Those might have been in Donruss or whatever other sets. But just are there any other iconic Panini inserts brands that you might just want the community to be aware of?
Yeah, so I would say like there has been Color Blast and Prism, not necessarily an insert for me, but it's an insert that the market really likes. I think those are case hits and people get really excited for them. One, I don't know, and this is one that doesn't cross over into other products. It's not in basketball, but it is in football. Another parallel that I really, really like, if I'm going to spend money on a parallel, would be the gold vinyl out of five. Now, if you think about what a superfractor looks like, that is what the gold vinyl looks like. It's basically a replica of the superfractor from the Topps era, heisted by Panini, but the cards aren't one of one. They're out of five. I think those cards, it's funny if you look at uh, the gold vinyl sales which are five copies as opposed to 10 in the true gold sale, like they're not, just because there's less doesn't mean that they're higher value than the golds. I'm not a big insert guy in general. So typically for me, when I'm collecting Panini product, I'm just trying to acquire the rare and scarce parallels of that we've talked about here. The only other thing I would call out, and I don't know if golf is going to do this or not, but there's the first off the line parallels that typically are part of the product, which you think like WWE 2022 debut flagship edition, first off the line, their gold shimmer parallel is out of three. So it is the second rarest parallel across all the product. And it's numbered to three. So that was a chase card for me. But yeah, it varies across sports. So it's hard for me to speculate what's going to be in golf, but those are just some of my personal favorites.
I want to hammer home what you're saying here about parallels because Panini has shimmer, as you said. They've got cracked ice, disco, wave, come in different colors. Some of them might even be the same serial numbers as other colors. So, you might look at it and say, oh, they've got 15 different parallels with an entire rainbow of colors, but they've got that same rainbow in slightly different stylings. Potentially, there is a massive number of parallels. Like if you look back at, I think Zion Williamson's rookie season from what was that, 2019 or 2020?
Mhm.
Uh, I think he had, well, it was over 2,000 unique rookie cards. I'm sure a lot of those were Prism parallels. Prism, as you said, is an iconic brand. It's across different sports and it's a mainstay in this era of the hobby. Now, Prism out of 25 is going to be way more sought after than a Goodwin Champions out of 25. or even just an upper deck base card out of 25. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is another thing that to make things even confusing for your listeners who are getting exposed to Panini for the or Prism for the first time is that this like sets and configurations and serial number changes over the course of period of time. What something might be 25 one year might be out of 49 the next year. And I think to me those are the those are like the red flags. Like those are the red flags to let you know like if there's not consistency across the product over a course period of time, which is going to be impossible in a debut year. I don't get me wrong, I understand that, but those are the things you want to look at: the consistency, lineage, and legacy across a long period of time. That to me is what holds collectability. One thing you can do is like pick a sport, like just go to Cardboard Connection, look at like a 3 year period and just start tracking like what's consistent or what's not. So at least you're educated at some level once the sell sheet comes out and you can see all the parallels that go after. And like part of this too is like I know like the way we're talking about it, it's like do this, don't do that. There's like really none of that. Like if something hits you and it makes you happy, like go buy it by all means. But it's just like trying to prepare anyone who hasn't been exposed to Prism in the past. There are things within the product set that I think are good to be aware of before you go out and you spend a bunch of money buying cards.
If you're not aware, there are some pitfalls and traps. Keeping in mind that this Prism release is only live golfers. So
Mhm.
live golfers were previously, for the most part, on the PGA Tour. Obviously, Tiger Woods is not playing on the live tour. PGA will continue to license directly with Upper Deck. So as excited as I am, I have to keep reminding myself there's only going to be 50 something golfers that we're going to get through Panini Prizm and all the other Panini sets. A lot of them are huge names. It's going to be their first cards ever. It's going to be super exciting. I've mentioned them basically every episode since the announcement. Brooks Koepka, Cameron Smith, a handful of others, plus guys who we haven't had cards for in over a decade. Bubba Watson, Sergio Garcia. For the most part, Liv has these big names because they chase them in order to draw eyes to their tour. But a lot of them are, towards the end of their career, older guys who just took it as, one last payday. Some exceptions, some younger guys who are still in their prime, Bryson DeChambeau, Matthew Wolf, who I'm a personal collector of. So just how do you think the hobby, whether it's golf card collectors or even those people you mentioned who might come to Prism from other sports, how do you think this is all going to be received, considering that there's going to be no Tiger Woods and the PGA Tour that plays every Sunday? You're not going to see any of those guys in the set.
I think what matters most is that it's the first year of Prism, and that should be the lens that you look at it through. And the past and present and the fusion of that, regardless of what tour it is really cool and is really exciting. And you talking through that, it really reminds me of like, I know one is predetermined and one is actual sport, but it reminds me of wrestling where you've got when the Prism product dropped, you have active talent that you turn on the TV and watch. And then you also had legends. Most of the time, the legends, guys who aren't even in the ring anymore, command just about as much, if not more, than the active players, just based on the connection with people who have collected or watched those guys over the course of the period of time. So I would imagine that might play out too with golf. And this is another point that I think is really important. First year, anything usually matters. First year, Prism like really, really matters. And I find myself as I'm a collector constantly trying to find ways to pick up cards that I desire out of those debut years. So yeah, I wouldn't focus on what's not there. I would mostly just focus on like who is in this checklist that you connect with and that are can be or you want to be part of your collection and start there.
Awesome. You're getting me fired up for Prism Golf.
It's
Uh,
I hope to be honest with you, like I don't collect golf cards. I watch golf. I don't collect golf cards. I've got enough collections, but like I will be paying attention as a non-golf collector to see what happens with these cards just because I'm interested in the performance of the Prism product across sports. I think it's an interesting topic.
mhm. And just to wrap up, that first year Prism matters. The concept of a first year set does come up in golf already. So a recent example is Metal Universe Champions, which is a multi-sport set, 2021 Metal Universe Champions, and those being the first precious metal gems for golfers, except for the employee exclusive Tiger Woods, which was back in like 2013. That year of precious metal gems matters because Upper Deck has produced PMG retro reprints subsequently every year since then. When it comes to Prizm, the first year Prizm is a big deal. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's a premium. I if you like you can just go back and look at the debut year of Panini Prizm was 2012, and there's a basketball and then there's a football product. And what I like about the debut year of those products is that the parallel checklist was simpler times back in 2012, and the gold Prism was available in 2012 and it's available in 2023. And so like that, to me, that lineage I talk about is really really important. But if you just look at the price, the debut years in 2012 are going for in comparison to modern day cards. Now there's some variables based on rookie hype and this and that, but just like the legacy of the debut year. And it's not my favorite year aesthetically. Like I love the shine on 2013. I love the full color backgrounds on 2014 and the players up front. But the 2012 cards in those respective sports like command a premium just because it's the first year and collectors can say that when they have the cards or are trying to sell the cards.
Awesome. And you referred to your wrestling collection before, and recently there was a first year set of wrestling, and I think that has carried similar weight. That's considered pretty niche in the hobby. And I relate to a lot of what you've talked about wrestling on your podcast because golf is very niche as well. So let's just wrap up with this. What advice would you give to me and a small group of golf cart enthusiasts who want to build our community around our niche?
I think the best way to do it is just to be like, this is a great start. The fact that you have this podcast that you're dedicating your passion to sharing information around the niche that you love, that in and of itself is a phenomenal start. And I think it's really good to curate conversations, to share information. Education is so important. And the more education that can be shared and conversations that can be happening, like that helps build and develop these niche segments organically. It is next to impossible, especially when a Prism product drops, to keep out people that are trying to benefit and make a buck off of that. And it's gonna ruffle a lot of golf collectors' feathers. I'm gonna state that now. You're gonna be upset at how high these cards go up. Cards are gonna sell for maybe bigger prices than you're used to in this area. It's just the nature of Prism. But I think at the end of the day, we're collecting because we're passionate about those segments. And my recommendation would just be keep sharing, keep educating. Share your cards too. I talk a lot about that. Post your cards and tell why you bought them, and share those. Like it's amazing to me the amount of people that don't post their cards or don't have information about why they bought those cards. Those are the things that start conversations and draw other people in and be interested in it. I can tell you the benefit of golf is there is a whole lot of people globally that watch golf and have never collected the cards. People are sitting on their couch with families over and they have the tournaments are on, and it's part of the culture of sports. Like it is normal to walk into any house in the United States on a Sunday and there to be golf on TV. And it's the same way that people grew up with wrestling and it was a part of their childhood. It's those moments that are so important, and it's really hard to get those moments that are so normal in the way we approach sports as a fan to translate over to actually collecting and buying sports cards. But what I found is that it takes a few people to ignite that by creating content, by sharing their cards and doing that consistently. And like that stuff is like a magnet. Like people will be curious and come in. And that's the fun part about watching these niche categories grow.
Hmm. Well, thank you for the kick in the butt. I need to start sharing my cards. I've posted maybe half of my collection or thereabouts, so I need to spend an hour or two just setting up a little photo display on my desk and share my stories with y'all. Brett, thank you so much for your first time debut appearance on Fondling Cardboard. For you guys, you listeners, Check Brett out on Instagram at Stacking Slabs. He's got an amazing podcast also called Stacking Slabs. Brett, anything else you want to plug?
Check out the podcast. And Mike, like when that product drops, let's get you on the show. Let's talk about it. That would be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Brett. Man, what a good conversation that was. I always enjoy talking to Brett, and I always enjoy talking about golf cards. And I am fired up. I'm absolutely amped up. I don't care if Live is controversial. I don't care if they join the PGA. All I care about is that we are getting Prizm. We are getting it for some very iconic golfers, modern legends of the game like Brooks Koepka, Phil Mickelson. There's so many other names that we forget are over on Live Golf. The only thing that's really bringing me back down to earth is the fact that the Prizm brand really carries over to different sports, to collectors of basically any types of cardboard. And it's going to bring a lot of different eyeballs into the golf cart hobby. It's exciting. I really look forward to all the buzz and whirlwind of activity. However, prices are going to be crazy. And it might take 6 months, maybe 12 months or more before I convince myself to make some big moves. So, listeners, please hold me accountable to that, because I know as soon as Prizm drops, I'm going to get all amped up and buy the very first Prizm Gold that hits the market, no matter who the player is. I'd have to approach this with a bit of restraint and discipline, maybe focus on my Range Goats team, maybe even narrow it down to just Matthew Wolff, maybe Bubba Watson, until the prices really shake out and I'm able to afford some bigger cards of the bigger names. But in the present, we have a card of the week, and that is 2022 Upper Deck Exquisite Collection Will Zalatoris rookie card, numbered 144 out of 149. And speaking of those portfolio style of sets, this one was actually pulled out of a Goodwin Champions set. This is a thicker card, 130 point stock. For those of you who don't know, point is a way to measure the thickness of the card, and it's just thousandths of an inch. So this is 130 thousandths of an inch thick. I love the simplistic design. The palette of white, gray, and black make it very elegant and timeless. And I don't know if this style of rookie card is necessarily what people are going to chase, but it is serial numbered. There's not a million of these out there. It's shiny. Not only does that have that simple, elegant design, but it's also appealing to my ultra-modern eye. And I love this card. And in fact, this is not a sales pitch, but I am willing to let this go. If there's a listener out there that might be interested in picking up a small batch of ultra-modern cards, I've got the Will Zalatoris rookie that I just described, as well as a Justin Suh rookie patch autograph, numbered out of 100, a Justin Rose rookie autograph, a Maverick McNeely Artifacts rookie patch auto, and a Nikolai Hodggaard rookie patch auto, also from Artifacts. I'm willing to let this batch go for, I don't know, $100, something like that. So hit me up at The Golf Card Collector on Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in. I do this just out of passion for the hobby and my obsession over trading cards. But what keeps me going is seeing the community growing. So all I ask is you tell a friend, check out the Funneling Cardboard podcast. There's this weird guy named Mike who loves golf, loves trading cards. See you again next week.